Now I'm learning that vulnerability is tougher than everything that I've ever done on the physical side. Being vulnerable and sharing your emotions and sharing your feelings, that's where real communication starts.
How do you take a story that is highly emotional and take people to that emotional space, but also bring them back up so that they don't get lost down there and lose the overriding message of resilience, vulnerability, empathy, healing? I'd love to get into the EDMR that you dove into so that you could be the man that you are today, that man of faith who's still highly productive, and you're a family man and all the other things, right? You didn't allow that to freeze you in time. You were able to get past that. So let's talk a little bit about how do you relive that story over and over in your talks and not get drugged down by the emotion of it and not allow your audience to kind of camp out there so that they don't get to hear the bigger message.
Yeah, it's something that when you experience any form of trauma, you think about it every day. There might be a trigger that pops up that reminds you of something that you went through that's horrible back in your past. With me, I think about it every day, probably multiple times in the day. I lose sleep at night. I still have my nightmares. I'm never going to get rid of that. I'm never ever going to get over that. So I've trained myself through EMDR therapy, which allows you to basically process each minute of time that I went through in that traumatic event and cry about it, which is really big for me because I'm not a crier. But in that moment in space when I was able to find a experienced therapist that I could really latch onto, and I knew that by telling her everything that had happened to me, from the goriest details to the screams to everything else that was so bad and horrible, to the inspiring moments as well, she was going to be able to take it. It wasn't going to scar her because she had heard some of these types of things before. So that was really big for me, was finding a relatable therapist first. Going through EMDR therapy was amazing to me because it allowed me to process each one of those minutes, put it into a black box behind me on a shelf, categorize everything so I could remember what I had done and what had happened to me and how a trigger in walking into a crowded environment could impact me. And so it was learning like what your new spidey senses were like, right? Trying to figure out how I would be and if I walked into a restaurant and I sat with my back to the door, which I never really do anymore. So now I always sit with my back up against the wall so I can see everything. Why am I like so vigilant in checking out exit points? Why am I so vigilant in body scanning people when we're in a crowded situation? Why am I so vigilant in making sure the security is where it should be? All these little checkpoints you learn from. And I think that's the storyline. So when I'm telling the story and I've got you where I really want you as a speaker because I want you to feel what I felt. That's my job now. I don't want you to see what I saw. I want you to feel what I felt. I don't want you to have those nightmares that I have. I don't, my wife doesn't even know everything that I've gone through because she luckily was able to, someone let her into their condo, 26 people, they barricaded the place. She was safe. Thank God for, I mean, four individuals that were complete angels that let all those people in, but she doesn't even know, but she knows my heartbeat. And when I take you through that journey, it now then becomes an uplift. And I started with my conversation with Lee, the combat vet. It goes on to my friend Chad, that's a firefighter out in Rockland, California, that talks about EMDR therapy. All of a sudden, I realized I need this peer support group that's relatable to me because I can't talk to my dad. I can't talk to my mom. I can't talk to my wife. I can't talk to my sports buddies. Everybody is so supportive, but they don't share a relatable experience of knowing what that silence feels like. And in any type of trauma that we all go through, there's this moment of silence, a moment of pause, a moment where we question what the heck what happened right there? How do I now get through this? What am I going to do? Oh my gosh, I lost somebody, or this happened to me. This is horrible. What do I do? So it's that moment of silence that we've all experienced. And I talk about how I was able to get through that silence and recognize when that silence is starting to creep back up on me, and how I relax myself, how I separate. And so it instantly transitions now into an education play, right? And then it's relatable to so many different people. And in my conversations, I've had Navy SEALs pull me aside and say, hey, what you just spoke about in the aftermath of your silence, I've been going through that for 20 years with a combat vet, or a combat situation where one of my buddies almost died, and I just don't even know what to do. And I said, have you called him? Have you talked to him? Have you been vulnerable? Because I'm a big, tough guy. Nobody's ever going to tell me that I'm not strong. Nobody's ever going to tell me that I'm not tough. I've done tough things before Vegas happened. I've helped people pull them out of cars, pulled a man out of a burning truck. I'm not afraid to go into the battle, or the heat of everything, and put my life on the line. But in that moment, now I'm learning that vulnerability is tougher than everything that I've ever done on the physical side. Being vulnerable and sharing your emotions and sharing your feelings, that's where real communication starts. And it fosters all the way into the business sense, into the sports side, from the coach being vulnerable, allowing those athletes to talk to the coach about their interpersonal feelings, allowing the regular worker to talk to their CEO because he's approachable, he's vulnerable, he's empathetic. That's how innovation is fostered. And I've just, through my corporate career, kind of put all that together. And I thought, this is what we should really be talking about. This is where we're hitting blocks in our society. And what's it all revolve around? Love. And I think that's the biggest piece in my heart that had come out really through that entire event. Losing those women in my arms, hearing the stories, it impacts me every day, but it drives me. It makes me who I am. It allows me to be a better dad. It allows me to be a better person in society. I am so happy with the person that I am and how I feel I can give back to this world. And that's empowering.